She had some really good photos that I guess those are the same ones you used in their stuff in your story map, huh, Dr. Patchen?
Yeah, I used the ones I took. A lot of them were in
Oh,
the same locations, even though she took a lot more, and I was able to use them as a guide.
yeah.
So I'm going to get into the map first. I'm going to share my screen,
Okay.
and then, so can everybody see the map now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the uh, map of the locations that we visited during the hydrological survey tour. So I split them into landfill and borrow pits, and then the second is water and air features. So we have some surface water features, and then a couple of private wells that we visited. Mr. Chasen, and I guess that was his sister or his cousin, or I just put sister.
Yeah, his sister.
Okay, good. You got that right. I was scribbling. Then, of course, Marcus Bayou and some other sites. And so I guess one of the purposes of this map, and you can open this map up from the link, is, of course, to provide a base map for Dr. Johnson to develop a drone flight plan. And so I guess she can go in and look at maybe a site like this one, which is the Clark Sand Pit. And of course, when we got to the Clark Sand Pit, if you want to see the photo, you can open up the attribute table and scroll down to the Clark Sand Pit, and then click there. And then that was the view that we got. So this is as close as we could get to, I guess, the sand pit or what have you. And so, of course, we, with the drone, we can get a real-time view of what's happening past the fence line. And so you're probably noticing, well, we have this, looks like satellite photo here, but you probably already know this. In Google, who knows how old this photo is, right? I mean, this could be 2 or 3 years old. We don't get real-time photos in ArcGIS Online or any platform. So, and also Dr. Johnson's drone can take video. So if something is happening, if there's some release to air coming from the Sunbelt crushing site, then we can actually, we can actually see it in progress, as opposed to just a still photo. And so that is going to be one really good use of this map. And like I said, this is the exact same thing that you can get to if you want to use the map in any kind of a presentation. It's the same link. And then, of course, the map can be updated with more sites at any time. And so the, let's see, I'm just trying to find some good places. This would probably be another good place for drone flight here at, this is Longleaf Borough Pit from either side. And then, of course.
What about the school?
Which school? This high school?
Any of the schools? I remember there's one next to the sun crushing.
Right,
rock crushing.
This is Sunbelt Crushing.
Okay.
And that's
That's
the
it.
Oh.
That's the whole school conglomerate, I guess. right
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
West Florida High School.
the middle
Does
school.
your map show wind direction?
No, we could, I mean, if possible, I mean, that can be not in this format, but
Oh,
trying to think, it could be possible in a story map. I did create a story map for this also, but in a story map format, we could include a link to the closest weather station, or I could just demonstrate how to use that. So, for instance, if you wanted to get the current weather for the closest weather station. Okay, I was blanking on the name
no,
of it.
no, that's okay. I don't want to take up time on that. I just was wondering if there was anything.
No,
You don't have to do it.
it's really simple. If you go to Weather Underground,
Uh-huh.
then let's see. So what's the zip code area for? Well, what zip?
32505.
Yes, go to 32505, and then so here's a weather station in Pensacola. With it's close to that location, and you can get let's see, all the data from that weather station, including somewhere in here is wind direction. But yeah, you can get that from here.
Okay.
It'll take you to the closest weather station to your location. And not only that, you can get hourly data. It's much more
Well, and the other thing is that facility is so close, it really doesn't matter.
yeah, so here's the wind, 7
to
miles.
the school.
You can get real-time wind.
Southeast. Yeah, in that southeast direction.
And then if you wanted to find a weather station that's close.
Dr. Padgett, please, yeah, you've done enough. Thank you.
Okay, so
I see that it's southeast. That's good. I'm good.
So if you wanted to get closer, here are all the weather stations that are.
Okay.
Yeah, so that can be done in a couple of clicks.
Dr. Padgett, do you
Yeah.
have to let people into the Zoom call?
No, this is no password.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Dr. Warford said he's waiting to be let in. I was like, I don't remember that.
Oh, maybe let me see. It might be sometimes when there's that might be due to connection.
Recording, maybe too, because you're recording.
Yeah, he's not in the queue. Yeah, it's probably his connection speed. Yeah, that happens to me sometimes when I'm trying to get into a Globe meeting. Into a Zoom meeting. Okay, so then the last thing I just wanted to talk about was with Olivia is working on a project using vetiver, which is a very useful bioremediation grass. So vetiver has been used for landfill remediation in the South, and there's a lot of interest in it. And so we were thinking that if we could find, say, fence line properties like this one, or other ones where the vetiver could be planted by residents in their backyards that are in close proximity to some of these sites, we could actually see, how effective the plants are at providing some form of a buffer. Here's probably a good area to plant, that would form a buffer between what is probably contaminated soil and groundwater and their homes. And the vetiver can also be harvested. It's used to make essential oils. So it can also perhaps be harvested as a money-making tool or strategy. And I guess finally, the vetiver is such a widely used bioremediation product that it could become part of the training people how to use vetiver as a bioremediation project. We presume could be part of the hazardous materials training program for UFM at some point if the technique is perfected. But
So a question I have about the vetiver is, let's say I don't know if this is true or not, but just, experience some ways in which landfills can contaminate areas. Let's say the toxins, migrate and leach into the soil and neighboring yards. And let's say if you can detect, it can be detected maybe at the surface level, maybe also down to 8 feet. To what level of depth can this vetiver theoretically, because I know you're saying it's still experimental, remove toxins from the soil? Do you know?
Yeah, I can share research on that with you. That's why I wish, Olivia is the expert on that. But it has very deep roots, and it's a voracious, I guess it's hydrophilic. Those plants really love water. So it really draws a lot of water, well, I guess soil water and whatever toxins are in that water, and just draws them out. But yeah, it's a very deep-rooted plant. And another thing about it is that there's no danger of it becoming an invasive species. It's not like kudzu. It's not going to do what kudzu did, start with one kudzu plant and now it's everywhere. Usually, if it's not replanted, the native vegetation will drown it out. So it has to be replanted to keep it going, but there's no danger of it getting out of control. And like I said, if it is harvested, it can be used to make essential oils. It's a very fragrant grass.
What's the name of it?
It's called vetiver. I think it's VERTIVER.
And it's some type of form of a grass?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Yeah, Simone saying her and Dr. Wofford is trying to get on, and they didn't see the link.
I
So
sent Dr. Warford the email. So
Okay.
I think they're trying to get on with the old ones. Let me just resend it again for him and Simone.
Okay.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions about the map? So you have the map link, and so we can use it. I guess the next thing is using it to plan the drone flight map, Dr. Johnson, and also to look at possible areas for the vetiver. But that we're looking for funding for, well, the vetiver project, because what we think is that anything that involves people doing things at home at this time is going to attract funding. So let's plant some vetiver in your backyard, and as a community-based participatory research activity might be attractive right now. A lot of home-based science is getting a lot of attention right now in terms of funding. And the last thing is that vetiver is also an excellent flood mitigation plant. So it serves, dual purpose, remediation and flood mitigation at the same time.
So, Dr. Padgett, have you in terms of thinking this through, I don't know how much it costs to, plant a seed or a little amount of the grass, and how much do you need for a square? What would it take? Would we need to map out the areas the residents would be willing to give it a try?
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like I mean, it's a bit of an undertaking. I'm not trying to, but just in terms of planning the steps, what would be step 1, step 2?
oh yeah, the step 1 would be to develop the project design and then find funding source for it. Maybe the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they're definitely interested in this kind of project, or some, private funding source. But yeah, we would get outside funding to fund it, and of course, anybody that wanted to participate would be incentivized to do so. We wouldn't be looking for volunteers. We would actually incentivize people to plant this material in their yards. And like I said, if it really does.
Do you have a sense of what the cost of this grass is? Just curious.
Yeah.
Like how does it?
Like I said, Olivia's the expert, and I think.
Oh, right, sorry.
I have another question.
Yeah.
How many plants, like, do you have to plant an entire barrier, or can you just plant like a couple? What does that look like?
Yeah, it would have to be it could be like a backyard garden. Like for instance, where was it?
Oh, because it will draw wherever it is. It will draw a certain range of water to it.
Yeah. So for instance, like if this individual said, okay, let's just fill this area with vetiver, that would probably work. And assuming that there's some leachate flowing
In that direction.
And then we could use later on, the drone flight could also be used to see if there's any changes, positive changes in the soil, because there's soil quality characteristics that we can't see with the naked eye, but can be seen with different drone camera wavelengths.
The area that you're talking about, Dr. Paget, where you got your arrowhead, if you point up in the, go right up in that area, right there where you are right now, that area floods.
Okay.
That's the area that floods in front of that house.
The end of Rolling Hills Road. That makes sense.
Right in there, it floods. And when you were talking about that Betty Bear, I think that would probably be a good place somewhere in this area here, and as well as across the street, because you got Bayou Marcus, which is right here.
Yeah, we were at that's one of the headwaters.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So the headwaters is right where the stuff is dumping?
Oh, wow.
I've questioned this green circle. I thought was a dump space. Is that right?
That's a pond. That's actually water that's been flooded. In other words, that's over the time. That was a clay pit, some type of pit.
Yeah, that's what she's saying.
That's what I mean.
And it was filled up with water.
I get you. Right. I hear you.
Yeah, that's like.
So when you say the headwaters of Marcus Bayou, from the satellite photo, whenever it was taken, it's dry at this point. It was dry at that time. Or is there a little bit of water? Just kind of hard.
Water there. It's actually water there. You just don't see it.
Yeah.
On that photo. Okay.
From the photo.
In this kind of environment, there's probably a spring that feeds the headwaters, and then eventually there's other tributaries, and then it just keeps going and gets larger and keeps going and gets fed some more, and then eventually keeps going, and so just following it all the way, and it keeps getting larger, and then eventually flows out into.
Oh, there you go.
That's Crescent Lake. Yep.
Yeah.
Dr. Paget, do you have a sense of how many of those facilities, whether they're borrow pits or debris sites, could flow into that waterway, getting to flow into Marcus Bayou one way or another?
Yeah, we have. Let's see. There's Longleaf.
So everything that's in the Wedgewood area flows into it.
Then, even though this could be this is a Sunbelt crushing, which here's that has to be impacting
Look at that, and if you look at it, it says Marcus Bayou, and that right next to it. You see that language?
Yeah.
I mean, there are, so all along,
So everything flows into Marcus Bayou.
all
So all of the landfills and borough pits that you have listed on the map potentially flow into Marcus Bayou.
the ones that we see here, but let me see, that one, the Clark
It
Sand.
seems like, it seems like Wedgewood, and by that I mean Rolling Hills and Olive Heights too, would be sort of like a space where you could, if you were looking at it like more of like a game board or something, and you put a bunch of marbles, and like each marble is a borrow pit or a debris, however those marbles would flow by the tilt of the surface you've got them on, right? The surface being the community. They all will go, they all will flow into the wherever the lowest part of that tilt is, right?
Mhm.
And it seems like the lowest parts are always where the water is. Like those are the lowest parts of the community.
Yeah. Anytime you see surface water, that's going to be the lowest elevation. So yes, I mean, pretty much, if there's water, if there's water anywhere in this drainage basin, it's going to wind up flowing into Crescent Lake. So pretty much anything that, even though this point, even though this is the Blossom Trail sand pit, that's just as far as we could get. That road went down and eventually is here. But of course, this is all connected to the Bayou Marcus drainage. And that's what that's as close as we could get. And there's a fence right there. But that's would be the advantage with the drone. The drone could fly in and really see what's happening in here.
When you said the drone can have different kind of like radars that can identify soil quality, could you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean that would be a different camera that might be infrared or some kind of false color. It's the same kind of when they show a thunderstorm coming and they have or a tornado warning and they have like the tornado area being purple and then maybe closer in it's red and yellow. Yeah, that's obviously that's not how tornado clouds look in real life. So the camera is able to assign colors to different cloud heights in a storm, and then that's how we can see the different intensities of the storm. Same thing, except it would be soil. So
what would be the soil quality you would be picking up on then if you could use something like that? I'm just curious. Like you wouldn't say I'm looking for lead soil, but you'd be looking for what soil that's porous, soil that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be possible that the lead could react with the soil and produce qualities that can be picked up with infrared imagery. It's called a reflectance variance. So if the soil is quote unquote healthy, it might show up as say green, and then if it's has higher lead content, I mean it might show up as red or
some other kind of
burgundy. And then over time, if we see less and less and less burgundy and more green in that soil after we plant the vetiver, then we could pretty much say that the plant is doing its job.
So a question I have then, is it possible to do that on, I'm sorry, I can't remember the scientist who's got the drone,
Johnson,
Dr.
Johnson.
Dr. Claire? Was it?
Yeah, Claire Johnson. Yeah, we would have to.
Dr. Claire Johnson. Does she have that kind of camera lighting?
I don't think so because like she does visible light photography. But that's one of the things that we would build into a grant budget. Is we'd probably put a couple of drones that are equipped with those cameras in the budget. Yeah, so like I said, we're at the very, very early stages of developing this project. And so I guess later on when if Olivia or Dr. Johnson are available, they're both traveling right now. So, but I think it's a really viable project. What's happening is vetiver has always been pretty much a tropical grass, but because of global warming, it's able to survive in the South, well, in the Gulf Coast states now, just in the 50-year period that we've seen these increased temperatures. So I guess that's one kind of good thing, is that this plant is viable. But we don't really know how far north it can be viable. So we're looking at another project where we're going to plant it at Tennessee State University's farm and at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and see, okay, can this plant be used outside of the tropical zone? But it's been used for landfill mitigation in Mississippi and in other places in around the Gulf Coast already. So it's viable. But Pastor Greer, you said that the $13 million for remediation, was it 13 million or 3 million?
13.
So what, when you say, would it be possible that if a project design was developed, that some of those funds could be used to fund something like a vetiver mitigation?
That's questionable, because I know his focus is actually the relocation. Folks who really want to move out of that community,
Okay.
to give them a starting point. We know we're going to need more than 13 million. We're looking probably about maybe 45 to 50 million is what we're looking for.
Okay, so you're primarily looking at relocation. Okay.
Yeah. But that's not to say that.
Let me just say this. I'm thinking that you have some really good ideas that could also help other of the CBOs, like that same kind of technology, and just making it accessible and used in other places as well, would be something we would, I'd like to learn more about and see how we can, work on trying to pursue funding for it outside of the relocation money.
Yeah.
The other piece of that, I'm going to say this last, sorry. The other piece of that is that how can we use the science, right, to make the case for relocation? And so that's the, selfish interest that I have in this, is how can we tell the story and show the story about, how diabolical a situation is in Wedgewood that, really warrants the safe and just relocation on the individual terms of each of the folks who would want that in the community. And then for those who may decide not to, how do we transform the area to be, livable? So that's been my charge that I got from Reverend Avant at the start of this consortium, is like, how can we drive the science in a way that shows, the level, the extent to which there's pollution, contamination, health problems, need to get people off the site. And so so if we're all moving in that direction with the science, I think we're going to be fine. I think the vetiver is really helpful, because what it will do is show us, potentially where we have is a sense of how much of the area is right now contaminated, and whether you relocate people or not, you should be taking care of that. And then to the extent to which it might leave contaminants behind, because the plant just naturally doesn't pick up other stuff that's found in the soil. That's a potential situation. We don't know. But so we just got to be really strategic in how we're thinking about the science, because it's useful and it has 1,000,005 questions to answer, but we really want to be able to use it in a way that we're making the case for people to get relocation and the help they need.
Yeah. Soil and groundwater testing would have to be built into anything that we would do, because I'm assuming that I don't know. I'm sure. I mean, some testing. I would assume, given what we're looking at here would have to be done. I mean, other than just the hydrogen sulfide monitoring, just looking at the sheer size of some of these pits, I mean, you can even just see on this image that water is not the same color
It's water.
as maybe this, or, if you zoom out, I mean, that's clearly, something. I mean, if you look at maybe the least impacted situation here at Crescent Lake, and then look at that, I mean, that's not even with any kind of fancy schmancy.
I don't think you get that color green unless you have that 64 crayon box. I don't think that's in the 8 or the 16.
It's bad.
You look up 64 crayons to find that shade of green or close to it.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I only had
It
that.
doesn't even occur naturally in the 8 color crayon box is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, my
Dr.
mother can only get me that eight color crayon box, and I remember I was.
Did you think you were like the biggest thing? You got 64?
With the pencil sharpener in the back. No, I didn't have that.
He's from Baltimore.
Yeah, years ago I went on a blind date, and the woman left me a message on my answer machine, and she said, "I'm going to be wearing a terracotta dress." I didn't know what color that was. Before Google, I was like, "Terra, what?" I was looking around.
You spelled cotta with a K.
Yeah. It's just, you just could have said I'm wearing a brown dress. And then, okay, that. But yeah, you.
Hey, Dr. Patrick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Patrick. I'm sorry, I've been having technical difficulties, everybody. I want to ask you a question, and this springs from what Monique is talking about and making the case, and you mentioning definitely testing the soil. What is here is evidence of the movement of surface water. No doubt there's subsurface water flows that are identified and not identified that exacerbate the problem. Yeah. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's all connected. Yeah, because in Florida, when you see surface water, you're almost really looking at the water table. The shallow aquifer is right there at the surface, all over this area. You don't have to. I mean, as soon as you break the surface and dig a hole, it fills up with water.
That's right.
So all of it's connected. There's not. In some areas, there's surface water, then there's a clay layer that protects. But not in Florida. It's all.
That's right. I think that lays at the foundation to help and make the point that what you look is always more going on that's bad than what you're looking at on the map here. Right.
Yeah. There's probably at least 80 times more water in terms of volume underground than above. So what you see here at the surface is 80 times more water below here.
Subsurface, yes.
That we can't see. And in Florida, it moves much faster, either through a sand aquifer or through a limestone aquifer. The water and contamination can travel much farther and faster than any place else.
So I think those are if those hadn't been mentioned as a way of points, the unique qualities of the soil-water relationship in Florida, that can't get lost for people, especially people that don't know or assume that water kind of moves like it does in other places. And if we're from other places, I think that's going to help go a long way in keeping people on track about how pervasive this pollution is.
Yeah, like, so example, we know that that's a private well and that's a private well, but then the question is how many other of these. I mean, I'm assuming that I'm hoping that these people are on city water, not private wells, given how close they are to this. What is this now?
Yeah, I think Reverend Griff said that he gave a percentage of the number that were on city water.
There is they had a meeting back around, I can't remember, was it October, November? They came out, the ECUA came out and they did a presentation and talked about the three, they got three wells that feed water into the Wedgewood community. And one of the points that I've made with the one of the employees, I guess, with the ECUA was that, well, the one of the ones that you're talking about, which is at Softly Field, they found out has the whole airstrip over there, which they converted to a federal prison, was contaminated because of the chemicals and stuff that they were using to fight the fire, the plane fire, to put out fires on that base. And so a lot of folks had a lot of folks were complaining about their wells being contaminated over in that area. But the ECUA tried to reassure the people that, well, our well is 75 feet deep, you know, it's much deeper than the people who have private wells over in those areas. Didn't make any sense to me because of the fact that I told them, I said, well, one way or the other, how often do you check these wells? And if you only check them every 20 years or 15 years or whatever, I said, you could have contamination. And what happens, you know, one of their main pipelines, water lines, is actually going through rolling hills, through the pit itself. So if they got a crack or something in that pipe, guess what? That's seeping into the water table.
Yes,
and that's
sir.
going directly into those folks' homes. So, you know, you can't, really and truly, you can't, you got to have that water, their own personal water has to be tested in their homes to find out if they're getting any kind of contaminant in their water. So that's another thought that we got to look at.
Yeah, there's really no separation, apparently, you know, amongst any of the aquifers, deep, shallow, middle, you know, they're all connected. And the little conduit between two of them, and they'll mix.
They'll mix.
Can I suggest? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Morgan.
No, go ahead, Reverend. Pastor Bear, what were we gonna say?
Now say, go ahead.
You sure?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
All right. I'm wondering if Dr. King and Dr. Wofford could get together with Dr. Paget to think through some of these ideas around the use of the drones. And I would really love for initially, I'm getting greedy, right? So initially the drone was to kind of give us a good peek on top of what was going on, like what's on the other side of that wall, or that, you know, or, you know, at that borrow pit, or that, you know, debris site, waste site in the community. And I'm wondering if, and so that's all good. And as soon as that's done, we need to figure out a way to how to package those images and think about strategic use of it, and certainly sharing it with, you know, folks in the community. But I'm wondering if there could be also, not necessarily on this particular drone trip, right, because that's not going to happen, but if there could be some thinking through on that use of that radar to identify, you know, what can a radar identify in terms of soil quality that helps us identify potential contamination, for example, or other qualities that might be helpful for people to know. Again, building that case towards relocation that, you know, exposes, identifies like a vulnerability or a pathway of exposure for residents in the community. So that would be one. And then the second idea would be you know, exploring what could be done with the vertiver in the community as a potential option. And, you know, and I think it seems like it's like a placement is a concern, right? Like where would it be placed that would have the most effect theoretically, because it's proximity to the sites. And then I think it would be also helpful if we can, I don't know if this can be done through the drones, but it would be really good if we can just get visual, using the map as a base, but to create from that, you know, almost like with arrow lines or something, how this water is flowing from each of those sites and winding up in the water. Like that could be like just traced or shown, you know, so people can see.
Some
like,
interactive
okay, when I see
map
little
or
flare,
something interactive, Monique?
Yeah.
Well, it could be interactive, but what it should show you, like the square, well, this is Mr. Chasen's private well, but there are some other things you were pointing at, Dr. Paget, that was like a clay pit or a borrow pit or something like that. it would be good if, you know, for each of those squares that are like that for those
Yeah.
industrial uses, you could have a line of a certain color showing you the water flow. You know, like how, like whether, not that it's discharging, but that in terms of stormwater runoff, this is where it goes. But when it rains, if there's whatever's on there is moving now in this direction.
Yeah. Those maps were the ones that were in the other presentation, just the hydrology presentation. So yeah, we have that already for certain.
But the thing, but what it doesn't show is connecting, like I said, like an arrow line from the site to whatever surface water down below, tracing it out.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think I understand what she's saying.
That's what was on those other maps. I mean, just showing. I mean, yeah, we had the borrow pits connected to the surface water on
Right.
on the map. I mean, it's at a community scale. You're saying you wanted like to drill down to.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna pull it up because I let's see.
So Monique, what you're looking at right now is an elevation. The elevation that you're looking at is 117 feet above sea level. When you get down to the Sunbelt location, now that's down to about 57 feet above sea level. So everything is flowing downward.
I get the downward, but what you don't see is from that facility, water moving off that site, like an arrow showing you from that facility to that water surface body.
Yeah. I have the.
I'm trying to find your presentation.
The subsurface flow map with arrows for this area. That's definitely on one map. The other map is a map of elevation. Doesn't have the arrows in it, but you can pretty much visualize that water is going to flow downhill. But those are both. Those are static maps. I mean, I can look and there might be a potentiometric surface map in ArcGIS Online that I can.
I'm sorry. This is what I'm looking at. It's not necessarily because I've seen those kinds of. What you want to be able to do is just like you can look at varicose veins on somebody's leg, right? You should be able. It would be great to get some sort of visualization of the area where you see all of the sites, and from each of the sites you actually see direct lines drawn tracing the pathway of water towards Crescent Lake, for example.
I mean, I could add.
So what you have is stuff that's suggesting, but for anyone, you don't it doesn't jump out at you. Wow, this is where the stuff that, there's water, rainfall. This is where stuff will be, where that water ends up.
Yeah, I could. That could be done to that graphic. I could just add some flow lines, I could see what that looks like on that graphic.
Dr. Paget, I have an idea about visualization of that. I'll talk to you about that. It's using dots that takes into account. It might even capture some of the subsurface water where it ends up from some of these points of origin. But I'll talk to you about that, and you can tell me if that sounds reasonable in the way of adding to a map. But I'll talk to you about that.
That'll be great. So thank you, Dr. Wofford, and thank you, Dr. Paget.
I may have caused him more problems than.
No. But my
definitely
thing is
talk to him.
I was hoping that the three of y'all could get together to just.
Yeah, I'm visualizing something that may get at what you are talking about, in addition to, or just as well as those lines.
Okay, but my suggestion that the three of y'all get together to plan and strategize around how some of these ideas can, be.
I'd be happy to do it.
Mm-hmm. So then, we're a little bit over time, y'all. Lafayette, I don't know if you're still on. Is she?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay.